Gaza. This is due to the lack of public order and safety, as well as ongoing hostilities, damaged roads, fuel shortages, and access restrictions. OCHA reports that during the entire month of June, Israeli authorities facilitated less than half of the 115 planned humanitarian assistance missions to northern Gaza. More than a third were impeded, nearly 10% were denied access, and about 9% were canceled due to logistical, operational, or security reasons. Meanwhile, our humanitarian colleagues warned that the unexploded ordnance continues to pose a significant risk to the lives of people all across Gaza. That includes internally displaced people and people trying to return to areas from whence they came. Children are particularly at risk, and as an example, on Saturday, a 9-year-old girl was reportedly killed and 3 others injured by unexploded ordnance in an area south of Khan Yunis. And just moving north to Lebanon, our peacekeeping colleagues tell us that the head of the UN peacekeeping mission, General Haroldo Lazzaro, went over the weekend to meet with 13 mayors of the Al-Khala Union representing communities in southwest Lebanon. That visit took place in Tibnin in sector west of the peacekeeping mission. They discussed the current situation amid ongoing exchanges of fire along the Blue Line and the severe impact on local population. Since October 8, 2023, several villages, as you know, in southern Lebanon have suffered severe damage. General Lazzaro underscored UNIFIL's commitment to working towards the restoration of a cessation of hostilities under the framework of Resolution 1701 and stability and security for the people of Lebanon and Israel. And as a reminder, the hostilities, as you know, have on both sides of the Blue Line have impacted tens of thousands of people, both in Israel and Lebanon. Turning to Myanmar, concerns over the protection of civilians are on the rise as conflict continues to expand across the country. Landmines, the use of heavy weapons, and aerial bombardment continue to push people from their homes and worsen an already dire humanitarian situation. According to our figures, more than 3 million people are estimated to be displaced in the country. Many are living without proper shelter, enduring severe weather conditions. In the state capital, Sitwe, there are reports of newly planted mines, forced evictions, and mass arrests around the town. There have also been worrying trends of attacks on humanitarian facilities in Rakhine and other areas. The NGO Médecins Sans Frontières has now suspended its medical activities in 3 townships in northern Rakhine, citing the deteriorating security situation. 6 months into the year, the $994 million humanitarian needs and response plan for Myanmar is only 12% funded, with about $123 million in the bank. We urgently need more resources to restore funding and to resume operations. And moving back to Europe and Ukraine, the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs says the attacks, which started last Friday, are continuing over the weekend, causing more than 100 casualties in frontline regions, with Donetsk, Kharkiv, Kherson, and Zaporizhzhia being the most affected. Add it all up together, authorities reported more than 120 civilian casualties over the past days, including nearly 40 people killed and massive damage to civilian infrastructure. Aid workers are providing emergency assistance, complementing the efforts of the first responders and municipal services. They provide medical and psychosocial support and other help, including on repairing of damaged homes and facilities. Quick update from Brazil, where a UN team led by the resident coordinator Sylvia Rooks and 14 UN agencies are supporting the government's recovery and reconstruction efforts after the recent devastating floods in the southern part of the country. UNHCR, the International Organization for Migration, and UNICEF are providing services such as documentation, legal counseling, and social benefits with multilingual services and guidance to those impacted by the floods. UNFPA is providing gender-based violence prevention and response services, including safe spaces. They're also helping with vulnerable populations, including the LGBTQ plus community, as well as older people. And in a message from the Secretary General to the Austrian Forum for Peace at its session entitled Towards a Climate Peace, the Secretary General said that this year's theme, which underscores the interconnectedness between conflict and climate chaos, freshwater lake in the world. Okay. First of all, Zimbabwe is not a lake. Okay, so you got to figure out what that lake is. The lake is 410 miles long. I need one country, okay? The additional factor is that this country has two capital cities. The political capital is Gitega. Burundi. I know, but you can't say Rwanda or Burundi. You got to choose one. So we thank our friends in Bujumbura. We now have 119 paid up numbers. I mean, you could list out all 193 and you'd win. So
well, I
anyway.
only listed two.
Okay. Edie.
Thank
Yeah,
you. Steph, does the Secretary General have any reaction to Israel's order in the last hour or two ordering the evacuation of about half of Khan Yunis, where a lot of people from Rafah have fled?
It just shows yet again that no place is safe in Gaza, that more efforts need to be made to protect civilians. It's another stop in this deadly circular movement that the population in Gaza has to undergo on a regular basis. This is yet again why we need to see an end to this conflict. We need to see a humanitarian ceasefire, the release of the hostages, and which would lead to our ability to distribute aid quickly to all those who need it.
And I'm asking again about the UN review on aid from the U.S. peer, and I'm specifically asking because the World Food Program did pick up some aid from the peer area over the weekend.
So I think we need to be clear. We still don't have the green light from our security colleagues to operate, to take material from the pier whenever it returns. WFP, I think, out of a very correct concern that all the aid that had piled up there may go to waste, contracted a private company to start moving those resources to the WFP warehouse, and that is, as far as I know, is ongoing. But right now, the pier is not operating, as far as I know, and nevertheless, we still don't have the green light from our security colleagues to start. Michelle.
Thanks, Steph. Just on the general lawlessness that the UN and aid groups are confronting in Gaza, what exactly is the UN asking? Obviously, you want a ceasefire, but aside from that, what do you want from Israel to try and improve that situation? You know, you've spoken about not being able to use the civilian police. What are the specific asks from the UN on that?
Well, one of the main things we've asked for is an effective coordination and deconfliction system with the Israeli authorities, which we don't feel we have now. permission to bring in the equipment that we feel is necessary to enhance the security of our staff, which includes armored vehicles, which includes the necessary communications equipment, and a commitment of the Israeli security forces to their responsibilities to facilitate humanitarian assistance and to protect humanitarian staff and installations.
So using the civilian police is, you're not...
Listen, I think we are, I don't want to say we've moved on from there, but time has passed. As we've said, there is now an increased amount of lawlessness, activities by criminal gangs and others. We're trying to get some basics here, but it's what we just to do really the bare minimum that we're able to do.
And then, sorry, last one. Just in terms of access into Gaza, what are the conversations being had about Rafah and trying to get that reopened?
The Rafah, there have been discussions, but the point is that the crossing remains closed. Deji and then Margaret.
Back to the floating dock. It's been reported that floating dock has been dismantled because of the weather again. Can you confirm that?
No, because I didn't mantle it, so I can't confirm dismantling it.
Okay, but so far, do you have a number? Like how many tons of food has WFP picked up from that pier?
I can get you that number. I mean, we've had it in terms of trucks. I can try to get you that number.
Okay. Another thing. This weekend, Turkish President Erdogan said that he's not ruling out to meet with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Do you think the bilateral meeting between the presidents would be a positive move to solve the Syrian problem?
I think for us, there is a roadmap to solving, as you say, the quote-unquote Syrian problem. And that's the Security Council resolution, I think 2254, if I'm not mistaken. Heads of states will have bilateral meetings. We obviously are, as a matter of principle, for increased dialogue, if that dialogue will lead to something positive. But I'm not going to comment specifically on that. Margaret Bashir.
Thank you. Steph, the director of El Shifa Hospital, Dr. Mohammed Abu Salmiya, was released from Israeli custody today after 7 months in detention without charges. He said at a press conference that he and other detainees were subjected to extreme torture. Does the UN have any reaction to his release? Well,
we're obviously glad that he's been released, but very concerned about his state following his release. We've seen the press reports. I know our colleagues at the World Health Organization, I have no doubt we'll be speaking to him or trying to get in touch with him shortly. As you know, he was taken from a convoy of World WHO vehicles when he was detained without any charges. He is not the only Palestinian that we have seen detained and released who've come out and said they've gone through really inhumane treatment, and I think our human rights colleagues have spoken very eloquently about that. Dulcie, then Gabriel, and then...
Thanks. If you could clarify what triggered this DSS review, because there are conflicting reports that it was about the Israeli raid on Dujarric and the 274 Palestinians who were killed, and that the Israelis were disguised as humanitarians, as well as that the IDF evacuated the hostages by helicopter close to the U.S. pier. So what actually triggered this review? Thanks.
I think I'm not going to go into details of what actually triggered it. I can tell you that we are constantly looking at the security situation as the events on the ground dictated. Gabriel.
Thank you, Steph. Going back to a previous question on the asks by the UN. deconfliction you mentioned, equipment, and working with the Israeli security forces. How long have you been making those asks to the Israelis, and who exactly from the UN is leading that effort?
We've been in discussion with the Israeli security apparatus, I would say, since the beginning of the Israeli operation, but especially, I think, since the Rafah the Rafah operations. As more restrictions are put on us, as the security situation gets more complicated, we engage in greater dialogue. But we are in discussion with them almost on a daily basis. That is being had, both our Undersecretary General for Security Services, Gilles Michaud, had a conversation with COGAT when they had a delegation here in New York. Mohanad Hadi, the resident coordinator, who's also what we call the designated official for the occupied Palestinian territory, has also been in touch, not only with COGAT, but with the Southern Command, IDF Command. Ephraim.
Thank you so much. A follow-up on your answer to Maggie's question. One of the things the director of Al-Shifa Hospital also called for is for any international organization to visit the prisoners and observe their situation. Are you aware of any efforts that are being made in this regard? What is being done to?
I will check with our human rights colleagues who would be in the lead from the UN side if they've made any outreach to the Israeli authorities on that.
Okay, and another one, the Israeli Ministerial Committee for Legislation approved a bill that would bar administrative detention for Jews, but would make it permissible for Arabs. And I would like to know if you have any reaction to that.
I think we've spoken out against administrative detention, full stop. Benno, then Nabil.
Thank you, Steph. The SG spoke out about a possible shift to the far right in many countries around the world. I think in the last year, at least, I heard him saying that a few times. Now we have a far-right party in France being the strongest force after the snap election. Is there any comment?
No, we don't have any particular comment in the wake of, in the midst of a two-round election. Though the Secretary General's opinion, I can tell you, has not, of how he expressed himself and what he said, remains unchanged. Nabil. And then we'll go to our president.
So have you done or have you maybe received any assessment on the damages?
Sorry, a little loud. Sorry.
Have you received, or maybe has the UN done any assessment on the damages on both sides of the blue line in southern Lebanon and northern Israel since October till now?
We have, our UNIFIL colleagues, our OCHA colleagues are present in the south in support of the population. We do not have a presence in northern Israel, but we do very well know that civilian population in northern Israel has also been negatively impacted. Civilians on both sides of the blue line have been negatively impacted by the ongoing hostilities, and one can only imagine the catastrophic impact that a full-blown war would have.
No, I'm asking about damages in properties.
I don't think we've done a full assessment.
And how do you describe now the freedom of movement for a situation for UNIFIL? Are they still able to do their daily routine?
I have not. Movement? I think given the situation on the ground, they've been able to continue to implement their mandate despite all the risks that they may incur. But they've been, I think, doing a very good job on that front. Okay, I will.